This past offseason, the New Orleans Pelicans made one of the worst draft night trades we have seen in a while. They traded all the way up to the 13th pick and gave up an unprotected first-round pick in the 2026 NBA draft to go up and get Derik Queen. And at the time, everybody hated the move. It made absolutely no sense for them to move up just to 13. It's not like they're moving into the top 5. People didn't think that part of the draft was particularly strong. And the craziest part of all of it was giving away their unprotected 2026 first-round pick when, one, most people didn't think the Pelicans were going to be very good, and two, even if they were going to be good, there were massive injury concerns around the roster, so it didn't make any sense at all. And as soon as the season started, it was clear the Pelicans are bad. They're still bad. As of this recording, they're 3-22. They genuinely could give away the first overall pick in a loaded 2026 draft to move up from the 20s in the draft all the way up to 13. And all of the things that I just mentioned just continue to make the situation crazier and crazier. The fact that they made the move in the first place, the fact that they immediately were hurt and were really bad, and that their record has been so bad. And the only other piece of this, and the piece that everybody just kind of forgot about, was, what about Derik Queen? What about the guy that they actually traded up to go and get? Because clearly they had a lot of conviction about Derik Queen being a guy that they had to have. And all the focus was on the trade and not on the player. And the only thing that could have made the situation that much crazier is whatever happens with Queen and his career. Is he going to be really bad? Or what's actually happening? Derik Queen has been unbelievable as a rookie for the Pelicans and kind of puts this trade in a little bit of a different context. So let's talk about Queen as a player. In the beginning of the year, they weren't really playing him all that much, and I would suspect that was partially because he's a rookie and partially because there are some real defensive concerns here that I think are going to continue to be an issue for him throughout his career potentially. But we've seen guys that can provide either so much value on offense or just improve as defenders moving forward that it doesn't really negatively impact them all that much. And really the exciting stuff for Queen as he's finally played more is all of the stuff that he's doing on offense. I mean, we're talking about putting up 30-point triple-doubles. This guy has been a complete revelation for the Pelicans, and him being really good doesn't necessarily save the trade unless he's like future All-NBA caliber guy, but it certainly helps things in hindsight. Now, on the floor, he's a very unique player. We've already talked a little bit about some of the defensive concerns. I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about the positives. I want to talk about the offense. He's a really intriguing passer where they are really emphasizing him from the elbows and as a creator in the offense, which to me tells me that they are seeing things that they would like to continue to expand on within his game. And he's able to create out of the elbows. He's able to create at the top of the key. There's even been some stuff where like he's getting ball screens and attacking, and his passing instincts have gotten to the point already where teams are not willing to play off of him. Typically, when you have someone like Derik Queen that's his size that has not figured out a way to be a consistent three-point shooter yet, teams will play off of you so they can just help there, help here, and it doesn't really, you're not really a threat when you have the ball unless you're actively driving to the rim. But Queen's passing is so good that teams are actually playing up on him, not because they're afraid he's going to shoot, but because they want to provide some kind of deterrent for his passing vision. And then that kind of opens up the rest of his game. It's very interesting because typically, like if a guy can't shoot and he's just relying strictly on driving, then it becomes really difficult. But teams are actually playing up on him because of his passing. And so that's allowing him to almost function as someone that they are afraid of as a shooter, which opens up all of the driving stuff. He's extremely strong. He's got great feet for someone his size and a pretty good handle as well. It reminds me a little bit of like a quicker version of someone like Alperen Şengün early in his career, where it's a lot of try to get his shoulder by you, and if he doesn't, he's just going to spin back the other way, throw his other shoulder into you. He's trying to knock people off their spot, and he's just a determined driver. He will get to the rim. He'll pump fake you a couple of times. He is just adamant about getting to the rim. And it's interesting in the context of the Pelicans, right? Because obviously he's right-handed, and there's a lot of physical things that are different, but it's a little bit like what Zion has shown throughout his career, although not quite at that level from a scoring perspective yet, and Queen as a much better passer, but stylistically, there's some crossover and some similarities there, which of course brings up some of the kind of long-term roster questions with the Pelicans that we're going to talk about. But the last piece of the puzzle that I think makes Derik Queen, one, really special, and two, something I want to continue to keep an eye on, is his touch around the rim. And people are going to make this comparison every time there's a big guy that can pass. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, he's Jokic. People do that with Şengün, right? But one of the many things that makes Jokic so good is he doesn't miss twos. Like he just does not miss around the rim ever, basically. And it's because he has such unbelievable touch. He can fade this way, he can use either hand, he can float off the glass this way, and Derrick Queen, obviously not at the Jokic level yet, but I think that's one of the things that makes him pretty special offensively as like a scorer is he doesn't even really need to get by you. He just needs to be able to get his shot off, and he's so good with his touch around the rim. And when you put all those pieces together, you have a really intriguing and interesting offensive player that you can really play anywhere on offense with the exception of off the ball because he's not a shooter yet. But you can have him bring the ball up in transition and create from there. You can give him the ball in the wing and like set a ball screen, just have someone have a guard set a screen for him and have a big guard pick and roll, and he can attack that way. You can have him in like the mid post creating for other guys in like a Draymond style role. You can have him isolate if you get a switch, or he can just drive by people. And at any point when the defense decides to stop any of that stuff, he's just a great passer. Now, it hasn't translated to wins because the Pelicans roster is so bad, and defensively there's some long-term question marks. But in terms of overall offensive ability, this has been an unbelievable start to Derik Queen's career. And the obvious missing piece here, and the thing that I mentioned a couple of times, is the shooting. And we say this about like every single player ever that can't shoot, but if he ever figures out the jump shot, things get dangerous pretty quickly. But his game feels sustainable even if he doesn't develop into like a 40% three-point shooter, right? Because of the touch, because of his strength, because of his ability to drive, because of his ability to pass. And as long as the touch around the rim maintains, as long as we don't start getting some advanced numbers where he's shooting, 42% on twos all of a sudden for an entire month, I see no reason to think that this will not continue to be a thing for Derrick Queen in the mold of someone like Alperen Şengün. There are physical differences between the two, but I think their careers could follow a very similar path, where early in their careers, maybe they're not playing as much as people thought that they would because of some of the defensive concerns. Then as their careers progress, they figure out positionally where they need to be defensively, so they're good enough that it doesn't matter if they're not like above average on defense because they're so good on offense. Then you have this touch around the rim, you have the passing, and then obviously hopefully the shooting continues to progress for Derrick Queen. And then you get to year 4, year 5, and you're looking at an all-star caliber player in Şengün, and then now Derrick Queen. I think that's kind of the path that I see for him. And again, in the context of their roster, it's very interesting because all of the things that I just described don't work particularly well alongside of Zion. And I've recently made a video talking about how I think it's just kind of time for them to move on. Even outside of the Derrick Queen thing, like it's just time for them to do something else with Zion. And I don't really think there's a lot of positive overlap in their games together in the front court. I'd like to see it. I think it would be interesting, but just on paper, I don't think it works if neither guy can really shoot, if they both don't like need the ball in their hands, but are just better with the ball in their hands. And then it's just going to limit your spacing too much. And I think at this point, given the injury stuff, given the contract stuff with Zion, I'd obviously much rather just kind of build around Derrick Queen and move on from Zion and get some level of value for him. And all of the things I'm talking about here with Derrick Queen on the floor just provide a crazy level of context to the trade itself, because there is a scenario here where the Pelicans, quote unquote, win this trade, where their pick ends up somewhere in the top 5 of the 26th class, and that guy ends up not being very good, and Derrick Queen ends up making all-star teams. And if you look back on it, the Pelicans won the trade. They made this incredibly risky move to go up and get a guy that they felt really confident in, and then that player in the 26th class doesn't turn out to be very good. The problem with all of that is the Pelicans never needed to give up an unprotected 2026 pick to get Derrick Queen. They could have either taken him with their other first-round pick, which they got Jeremiah Fears, who's also been really good, or I'm confident they could have traded up to the 13th pick in the draft and had a top 3 or a top 5 protection on this 2026 pick. So you can still be as bad as you are. And if you have the worst record in the league and you have a top 5 protection on the pick, you can't lose the pick. And that was always a possibility for the Pelicans, given their roster, given their injury issues. So they could have, right now, had Jeremiah Fears, had Derrick Queen, and had a top 5 protection on their 2026 first-round pick. And if they finish with the worst record in the league, which it looks like they're going to, they could have had all of those things. So even with Derrick Queen playing really well, it still was a mistake by the Pelicans, because there is just no scenario in which the Hawks are looking at this and saying, you know what, we're actually not going to do this deal anymore because you added a top 3 or a top 5 protection. They wanted the pick, they wanted to move back, and the Pelicans still could have done this in a way that benefited them overall. It is a crazy, crazy situation though, and I'm so glad that Derrick Queen is playing well, because if he was really bad, this would be a complete catastrophe. And as of right now, it looks like it could actually maybe semi-work out for the Pelicans.